are blind, have low vision, or have another print disability which makes reading, holding a book, or turning a page difficult or impossible. The content is copyrighted by the respective publishers. For more information, please visit us on the web at nfradioreading.org.
Hello, this is Laura, and for the next hour, I'll be reading from the January 25th issue of the New York Times Style section on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. It makes sense that people see AI as God. A religious fervor surrounds our relationship with technology. By Joseph Bernstein. Hark! A sign of the end of times. No, not the 4 horsemen, nor a black sun, nor the resurrection of the dead. The omen that the rapture is upon us is none other than artificial intelligence. At least, such is the prophecy that has issued forth from the great syncretic dorm room of American culture, Joe Rogan's mind. In November, the most popular podcaster in the country suggested that the next holy manger might be located not in the Middle East, but inside a mainframe instead. Jesus was born out of a virgin mother. What's more virgin than a computer? He mused on the American Alchemy podcast. He added, if Jesus does return, even if Jesus was a physical person in the past, you don't think that he could return as artificial intelligence? After all, he noted, it reads your mind, and it loves you. Mr. Rogan's speculation followed months of conversation about AI and the end times. Also in November, Paul Kingsnorth, a writer and critic of modernity, appeared on the New York Times Opinion podcast, Interesting Times, and told the host, Ross Douthat, that the constant progress of the technological system, rapid advances in AI, would lead to the rise of beings which are very Antichrist-like, a false prophet imitating the second coming. Mr. Kingsnorth's arguary came after a June appearance on the same show by Peter Thiel, the tech investor and right-wing political activist, who made an opposite prediction, that a figure promising safety and salvation from those same rapid changes could soon arise, and that this figure would be the Antichrist, leading us astray from technological deliverance. Mr. Thiel and Mr. Kingsnorth are both idiosyncratic figures who for years have been thinking their way toward apocalyptic conclusions. And they are both thinking alongside a tech industry that for at least 20 years, since the futurist Ray Kurzweil popularized the idea of the technological singularity in which AI surpasses human intelligence, has concerned itself with the last days of humankind as we know it. But these men are not merely eccentrics. They reflect a new atmosphere charged with religious feeling. More and more, when it comes to our relationships with AI and the complex algorithms that shape so much of our modern subjectivity, we have slipped into the language and habits of mind we normally reserve for deities. And even people who do not make an explicit connection between AI and religion engage a kind of religious mode around the new technology. This turn comes in the context of an inescapable, one might say biblical, amount of prophesizing about AI since 2022 when OpenAI released ChatGPT to the public. That large language model and its impressive successors have made it slightly harder to dismiss the idea that we are on the verge of a technological revolution in which machines with greater capabilities than humans will meaningfully reshape human existence. It's a natural response to either be afraid of what we're being told or to embrace radical, almost messianistic hope as an alternative to being terrified, said Greg Epstein, the humanist chaplain at Harvard University and the author of the 2024 book Tech Agnostic: How Technology Became the World's Most Powerful Religion and Why It Desperately Needs a Reformation. Much of the general public's sense of the supposedly transcendent promise of AI comes from its interactions with chatbots like ChatGPT, which seem to know everything. And for many, AI and chatbot are used interchangeably. Just as important are our everyday engagements with AI through the personalization algorithms that drive modern social media. These have become so specific and at times so uncanny that they can at times seem to contain a spark of something human, or beyond human, divine. It can be hard to look backward in the face of technology that promises unprecedented transformation, but the human impulse to find awe and assign magical properties to the unknown is very old indeed. No, we aren't ancients seeing in every rainstorm and fire the awesome deeds of capricious deities. For one thing, we know where AI comes from. It still comes from us. A major impulse, though, has been activated, and it's one that can be put to many uses. Scientists have long understood that we anthropomorphize computers, turn them into characters. In much the same way that our brains fill in visual gaps when our vision is partly blocked, a phenomenon one Victorian physicist attributed to God the Divine Artificer, we naturally take a few strands of computer-generated text and weave them into an entire being. In 1985, Lucy Suchman, an anthropologist at Xerox's fabled Palo Alto Research Center, memorably described the phenomenon as the tendency to ascribe full intelligence on the basis of partial evidence. As soon as computational artifacts demonstrate some evidence of recognizably human abilities, in other words, we are inclined to endow them with the rest, Ms. Suchman wrote. But AI chatbots provide more than partial evidence of intelligence. Colloquial and always improving, they are not just begging to be personified, they personify themselves by design. And we can't help it, because the human bias towards anthropomorphization is an ancient one. According to the University of Michigan anthropologist Webb Keen, author of Animals, Robots, Gods: Adventures in the Moral Imagination, when we map human traits onto computers, we're participating in a long tradition that includes the Delphic Oracle, spirit mediums, and I Ching Yarrow stocks. The Delphic Oracle was a woman who was thought to be in direct contact with the god Apollo, the word of a deity given human form. Just as chatbots seem to mediate between a greater intelligence via a human voice, so was the oracle a literal medium. When humans create something like us that has the possibility of knowing beyond what we can know, Professor Keen said, it is a technology for superior insights. The algorithms that govern AI are indeed technologies for superior insight, guides to and messengers from the unfathomably vast digital universe that humans have spent the past 4 decades creating. At times, AI chatbots are disembodied, like the God of Abraham, communicating with us only through text. At other times, they appear as digital avatars. Avi Schiffman, the creator of much maligned Friend Pendant, a wearable chatbot, recognizes this power. In an interview with The Atlantic, Mr. Schiffman said that the closest relationship this is equivalent to is talking to a god. The creators of AI-powered apps that allow believers to text with Jesus, or similar god bots for Muslims and Hindus, seem to have the same insight. What unites the gods of every spiritual tradition is that they are capable of communicating with us. Megan O'Geeblin, author of the 2021 book God, Human, Animal, Machine: Technology, Metaphor, and the Search for Meaning, wrote in an email. Now we are faced with another invisible non-human form of intelligence that communicates linguistically with us. The slippage into describing AI religiously feels almost inevitable. To get some sense of the prophetic texture of the chatbot user relationship, think of the most extreme example, chatbot psychosis, in which people are driven to madness through their conversations with an AI. It recalls nothing so much as the lunatic who claims to be directly receiving God's inscrutable instructions. Because, like all gods, this technology is inscrutable. Some of the most popular chatbots, like ChatGPT, are considered black boxes, technologies whose inner workings are so complex that even the people who created them can't easily explain them. Sometimes they produce outputs that are thrillingly specific or helpful, creating the sense in the human user of being preternaturally unknown. So too do the AI-backed personalization algorithms that drive so much of contemporary media consumption. They produce uncanny results, seeming at times to overhear our conversations and predict our desires. What if the TikTok algorithm knows me better than I know myself? Asked a GQ Australia article. There is even a popular TikTok format dedicated to the sometimes eerie intimacy of the app's For You page. When your For You page shows you a video of a thought you had recently and never said aloud, reads the text in one video. When the FYP is mentioning things I only said in my brain, reads another. Like all memes, these contain a dose of irony, but they also reflect the extent to which the algorithm can seem to transmit from a mysterious dimension beyond mere human understanding. It's almost like we're returning to a pre-Enlightenment way of thinking, Miss O'Giblin said. One in which we have to take a decision or a prediction on faith as pure revelation. In 1841, the German philosopher Ludwig Feuerbach made the revolutionary argument that God is the outward projection of man's inner nature. 60 years later, the French sociologist Émile Durkheim suggested that God is society writ large. If humans make God in their image, it follows that to understand a society, we would do well to understand the characteristics of its deities. No one except Mr. Rogan would argue that AI chatbots have divine origins. They are trained in our image, even if we don't understand them. And there are important ways in which our use of chatbots differs from other forms of divination. For one, it is mostly individual. While Durkheim wrote of collective effervescence, the exhilaration of participating in a communal act of religious worship, our interactions with AI are automized. There is technically a church dedicated to worshiping AI, the engineer Anthony Lewandowski's outlandish way of the future. But communication with AI is mostly done alone. In a May essay, You're Literally Worshipping Your Phone, the linguist Adam Alexic wrote on his popular Substack that micro-religious attitudes have permeated contemporary social media use. Awe at the way the algorithm seems to know us, Mr. Alexic asserts, isn't so much different from the commonplace belief that God works in mysterious ways. Both responses reduce forces that seem to exceed human understanding into a graspable shorthand. More than that, Mr. Alexic argues interacting with the algorithm has come to resemble a religious ritual. Scrolling is a digital prayer, he said in an interview. You assume it knows a piece of you. You're offering your attention, and in exchange you get something. As anyone who has ever prayed in a house of worship or to God in bed at night will know, prayers are not always answered. But the act itself gives comfort and hope. Here lies an important difference between Mr. Alexic's digital prayer, which is a guaranteed transaction, and traditional religious prayer. The chatbot prayer is always met immediately with an answer, and the answer comes from an unctuous prophet. An analysis published this year found that AI chatbots are 50% more sycophantic than humans. Calibrated to maximize engagement, the major chatbots flatter their users and reflect back to them their worldview. The AI-driven personalization algorithm creates playlists for you and only you. According to Professor Keene, the anthropologist of religion, the relationship between users and chatbots is defined by narcissistic individualism, with AI incapable of delivering the hard truths of a traditional prophet or oracle. I am the only one who gets to initiate the conversation, Professor Keene said. It is there for me, and it serves me. And why might the corporations that make chatbots want to lock users in with easy answers of obsequious deity? Companies are trying to get trillions of dollars of investment, said Mr. Epstein, the humanist chaplain. Religion is a system of thinking and action that can get people to overcome what might otherwise be profound skepticism to build something at enormous scale that may not serve their own direct interests, but might serve a greater whole that is purportedly transcendent. And AI boosters do promise transcendence. Tech titans, including Sam Altman and Mark Andreessen, have predicted an endemic future powered by godlike algorithms, in which gains in productivity obviate the need for jobs and humans enjoy what once reported by Mr. Andreessen's venture capital firm called A16, an era of abundance. To be sure, these are self-interested promises from people who stand to increase their vast fortunes. The more we credit it with divine powers, the more we reinforce the power of the corporations that sell it, Professor Keene said. Perhaps, along with the swell of religious feeling towards technology, we are also seeing another form of deification in real time of the small handful of men and women who profit every time we bow our heads toward a device. You are listening to a reading of articles and features from the New York Times Style section on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. In search of a platonic co-parent. Platforms that match partners in procreation are experiencing a post-pandemic uptick. That's a lot of P's. By Allison Kruger. In November, Rave Reed went out to dinner with a man she met on an app. Over Italian food, they spent almost 3 hours talking about their values and goals. What are their views on politics and religion? Where do they envision themselves living? How many children do they want? And where would they want to educate them? I was just being very forward, said Ms. Reed, 33, who lives in Los Angeles and is the founder of a social wellness club. This was not a date, but a meeting to see if they could be successful co-parents. 2 adults with no expectations of maintaining a relationship outside of the shared raising of a child, or 2 or 3. A co-parent doesn't need to be my romantic partner, said Miss Reed, who would like to have a child before she turns 36. She added that she spent the dinner looking for stability and shared values with the stranger rather than flirty chemistry. They need to be a great teammate. Interest in platonic co-parenting is growing, with specialty apps experiencing substantial growth over the last few years. Modamily, the app Ms. Reed is using, connects people looking to start a family through dating, sperm donation, or platonic co-parenting. In 2020, the app reported having 30,000 users registered to the platform. By 2025, that number was 100,000. By the end of 2023, the year Let's Be Parents debuted, it reported having 1,200 active monthly users. Now it has 10,000, the app said. Co-parents reported having 150,000 registered users, up from $85,000 in 2020. As she entered her 30s, Ms. Reed noticed older friends who were stressed about finding a romantic partner in tandem with their biological clock. They want to have a baby with the next person they meet, she said. When she learned about co-parenting from people in her circle, the idea resonated. I really feel like it let me separate two huge decisions. Who do I want to date? And who do I want to parent with? She said. We put so much pressure on our partner to be everything. She uses a different app to date, though she is taking a break. She has only just begun the search for a co-parent and is still having thoughtful, values-based conversations with the man she met in November. But she's been surprised by the support she's received. I told my mom, who is very religious and traditional, and I was bracing myself. But she was actually super open-minded, she said. Parenthood is complex, and some platforms encourage their users to seek out mental health providers to help them understand their reasons for pursuing this approach and to navigate the complex relationships involved. Some advise seeking legal counsel as well for help drawing up a memorandum for the arrangement. Amelia Dema, a New York lawyer who practices reproductive law, has begun to see more people seeking out co-parenting contracts that cover topics like custody and visiting and financial obligations, she said. She added that she would not work with any co-parents who haven't first met with a mental health professional to iron out their intentions. My job is easier when I retain folks who are already on the right path, she said. Bill Patak, a licensed psychologist who lives in Baltimore and works with issues around infertility, agrees that it's important for people who want to co-parent to seek counseling before deciding to do it, not just for themselves, but for their future child. They will have more things to question than children in more traditional arrangements, he said, of kids in such arrangements. They may ask questions like, "We live in the same house, but you aren't married. Why is that?" Or, "Why do you live in a different house while Johnny and Bobby's parents don't?" Zachary Sahuk, 34, an environmental health and safety specialist in Price, Texas, and Amanda Lose, 47, a high school geography teacher, matched on Modamly in 2019 and spent 3 months vetting each other. They talked on the phone for a week, then met up to have dinner, and then talked on the phone every night. I would tell her, "You come up with a dozen questions for me, and I'll come up with a dozen questions for you." And then we would just fire questions at each other, he said. He said they saw eye to eye on about 80% of what they talked about: religion, child rearing, and where they wanted to live. Mr. Sahuk and Ms. Lose now have 2 sons, age 5 and 3, who were conceived through IVF. They live on a 52-acre ranch where they each have a house surrounded by lots of space. The kids live with her across the pasture, and Mr. Sahuk, who travels regularly for work, sees them in between projects. He said he grew up in a home with a lot of arguing and promised himself that he would never put his children through that. The way he saw it, he said, was that having children with someone who was his best friend, not his lover, would mitigate the risk. The situation works for them, he said. I'm not anti-marriage, but this is better for me, he said. I think one-size-fits-all doesn't even work in ball caps. Scholars are beginning to study how children and parents fare psychologically in platonic co-parenting situations. A report published in May by academics who conducted research at the University of Cambridge looked at how children and parents in 23 families fared psychologically when the elective non-romantic parents met online, compared with those who already knew each other. They were clear that elective co-parenting itself is not new. It's been happening for a really long time, particularly among the LGBTQ+ community, said Vasanti Jadva, who is a psychologist and one of the report's authors. What is new are these websites and this new way that people are finding each other, and that's what's really intrigued us. Dr. Jadva, who now leads the Family, Infancy and Childhood Research Lab at City St. George's University of London, added that the study was very specifically looking at how parenting works within these families, and also how the children do within these families. The conclusion? The children seem to be doing well and no different to other family types. The researchers did find one potential sticking point, she added, which was how other people perceive them. Some parents reported feeling stigmatized or being selective about who they explained their situation to. They had to create their own support systems, she said. After all, this type of arrangement has its opponents, particularly among the growing movement advocating the birth of more children, but within traditional families. There is certainly a really interesting push in the prenatal space to promote more babies, said Emma Waters, a policy analyst who studies families at the Heritage Foundation, a conservative think tank. What the movement misses is we shouldn't be about more babies being born, but we should prioritize more families being formed. Ms. Waters said people who are co-parenting outside a romantic relationship are placing their desires to have children over the best interests of the child. Pointing to a study from the Institute for Family Studies, another conservative think tank, she said that children raised in married families by their biological parents do the best across financial, educational, behavioral, and emotional stability metrics. Emma Berthoud, 38, a TV writer who lives in Montreal, always wanted to be a mother and believed it made more sense for her to do it with a friend than a romantic partner. She thought she had found a co-parent through a Facebook group, another popular avenue for connecting potential co-parents, but after trying to conceive for a year using at-home insemination, the two gave up. Around the same time, a couple she had been friends with for 15 years, Florence Lemieux, an occupational therapist, and Colin Boudras-Fournier, a comedian, offered to have a baby with her. Ms. Lemieux, 36, said she and Mr. Boudras-Fournier, 39, had their own hesitations about parenthood. We both have siblings with kids, she said. Seeing how hard it is, especially in the first few years, gave them pause. But for Ms. Lemieux, adding a third parent meant sharing responsibilities, not with a babysitter or nanny, but with someone who loves her child as much as she does. The three now have a 16-month-old son, who Ms. Berthaud conceived using sperm from Mr. Boudras-Fournier and at-home insemination. They live in a duplex that consists of 2 apartments, one above the other, connected by an interior staircase. They all see their son every day, but divvy up childcare duties and record any expense for the child, then split it 3 ways at the end of the month. Ms. Lemieux finds that their discussions about how to raise the baby are often less intense than the ones had by her friends making those choices with a romantic partner. It isn't one person against another, she said. We have to come to an agreement with 3 people, and it makes the discussions easier. Ms. Lemieux is currently carrying their second child. Ms. Berthaud said she is constantly afraid people won't understand the situation, but she has encountered much less confusion than she assumed she would. It's 2026 after all, she said, and there are so many family types. Mel Brooks is 99. He's still the funniest person who ever lived. The comedian joined Judd Apatow and Patton Oswalt at the Los Angeles premiere of the new documentary Mel Brooks, The 99-Year-Old Man, by Juno Carmel, photographs by Janelle Fong. Mel Brooks, Judd Apatow, Patton Oswalt, and fellow comedians descended on the Academy Museum of Motion Pictures in Los Angeles on Tuesday to celebrate the premiere of Mel Brooks, The 99-Year-Old Man. I'm very happy about anything that has to do with me that's positive, Mr. Brooks said on the red carpet. He smiled as he posed with family members and colleagues, striking showy poses for the photographers. The two-part documentary, directed by Judd Apatow and Michael Bonfiglio, offers a deep look at the life and work of Mr. Brooks, who turned 99 last June. "It's very busy-making," Mr. Brooks said of the film, which debuts Thursday on HBO Max. "It's also really lovely that human beings per se like my comedy." The 99-Year-Old Man, a title that riffs on The 2,000-Year-Old Man, the famous sketch he did with Carl Reiner, chronicles Mr. Brooks's romance with his second wife, the actress Anne Bancroft, who died in 2005, and his decades-long bromance with Mr. Reiner, who died in 2020. It also features interviews with influential comedians, including Jerry Seinfeld, Ben Stiller, Dave Chappelle, and Adam Sandler, and intersperses clips from Mr. Brooks's shows and movies, from Get Smart and The Producers to Young Frankenstein and Blazing Saddles. He wasn't afraid to show his influences, which is really ballsy, Mr. Oswalt said of Mr. Brooks's bold satires. The film gestures towards the sadness and loneliness of a long life, with commentary from several friends of Mr. Brooks who have died since recording their interviews, a group including David Lynch, Mr. Reiner, and Mr. Reiner's son Rob, who was murdered last month. Mr. Apatow, the director of The 40-Year-Old Virgin and Knocked Up, said he pitched the idea of a documentary to Mr. Brooks so that they would have an excuse to hang out. "I was about 7 when Young Frankenstein and Blazing Saddles came out, and my parents took me to the movies," Mr. Apatow said on the red carpet. "Those are some real life-changing experiences." Throughout the documentary, the directors explore how Mr. Brooks tackles heavy subjects with an irreverent levity. "He is the funniest person who ever lived," Mr. Apatow said. "There is a real moral center to his subjects. Watch something like The Producers or Blazing Saddles or History of the World. He attacks racism and fascism, and he's always attacking power and mocking governments not taking care of their people," he added. "So, we need him more than ever." The comedian Wayne Federman, one of the producers of the documentary, said Mr. Brooks's influence is unparalleled. "He's a connector to a time that's long gone." Bill Pullman, Maude Apatow, and other guests made their way to the bright green seats in the museum's Ted Mann Theater and grabbed boxes of popcorn. "Welcome to the bar mitzvah of Mel Brooks," Lisa Heller, one of HBO's documentary executives, said as she introduced the first part of the documentary. At the end of the screening, Mr. Brooks received a standing ovation as he made his way toward the front of the theater, where he sat for a short Q&A with the film's directors. The conversation was followed by a party at Fanny's, the Academy Museum's restaurant, where guests ordered the Young Frankensteiny, a martini, and the Blazing Saddles, a mocktail with blood orange, pomegranate, and sparkling water. "Can you watch that and notice how funny you were?" Mr. Apatow asked Mr. Brooks, who had seen the documentary for the first time. "Sometimes I can detach myself and see, that guy's funny," Mr. Brooks said. "And sometimes I can say, what an arrogant, stupid son of a," using an expletive. As the conversation jumped from his reaction to archival clips that he'd never seen to his military service during World War II and the death of Carl Reiner, a reflective Mr. Brooks said he was grateful to be busier than I've ever been in my life. He added that someone recently asked him if he planned to fly to London to see the West End revival of his hit musical The Producers. "I said, it's a triumph for me to get from the living room to the kitchen," Mr. Brooks said, to big laughs from the crowd. "I ain't going to make it. I ain't going to get to London, unless they put me in the toilet for the whole trip." You're listening to a reading of articles and features from the New York Times Style section on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Mamdani's aspiration for Gracie Mansion. Bidets. The mayor's hope to install bidets in his official residence reflects a growing acceptance among Americans of a tool that has long been unusual in the United States. By Alicia Haradasani Gupta. When New York City's new mayor, Zohran Mamdani, moved into Gracie Mansion with his wife, Rama Duwaji, last week, he mentioned that he had an aspirational hope for the people's house to install bidets in the bathrooms. "We'll see if we can actually get it done," he said. In a sit-down interview with ABC 7 New York that aired on Sunday, the mayor mentioned a few more details, noting that all he's envisioning is adding a handheld $25 water gun that you hook onto the side of the toilet. A spokesperson for the mayor confirmed in an email that installation had already begun at Gracie Mansion. Almost every mayor of New York has left a mark on the centuries-old residence, giving it a full makeover, as Michael Bloomberg did, or installing tune-ups, like Ed Koch's indoor barbecue pit and David Dinkin's handmade headboard. But for Mr. Mamdani to bring the bum-cleaning tool into the mansion is, at the very least, a nod to Americans' growing embrace of a device that is common in many parts of the world, but has long been seen in the United States as somewhat unusual. There is some evidence of this shift. In a 2026 survey of 700 industry experts by the National Kitchen and Bath Association, 76% of interior designers noted that homeowners were looking for toilets with more features, and 48% predicted that bidet seats would be popular in the next 3 years. Tushy, a Brooklyn-based bidet maker, has shipped over 2 million units across the United States since it was founded in 2015, according to Justin Allen, the company's chief executive. When we started Tushy, bidets in the U.S. were either seen as an inaccessible luxury or honestly just kind of weird, Mr. Allen said. But once you use one, it's hard to forget how much cleaner it feels. On social media, many users reacted to Mr. Mamdani's bidet announcement with enthusiasm, describing his redecorating goal as a priority and a must, while others expressed confusion over his focus on toilets rather than policies. In a comment responding to a video of the mayor's announcement, the daughter of former Mayor Rudolph W. Giuliani, Carolyn Rose, said she would have done it myself if I had known about bidets when I had lived there. Others said that the city should install bidets everywhere, and that Mr. Mamdani's hopes were an authentic reflection of his Indian heritage, as bidets are commonplace there. In fact, the United States is more or less a global outlier in terms of its stance towards the bidet, which is a term that encompasses several forms of water-based cleaning systems. More modern iterations are attached to toilet seats and have retractable spray wands. The most well-known style is made by the Japanese company Toto, which first released a bidet seat in 1980 and has since developed something of a cult following. Newer upstarts like Tushy have their own bidet seats, offering designs from the basic to the luxurious, with the ability to heat toilet seats, control water temperature, and neutralize odors. Across Europe, bidets are often separate, standalone basins. The term bidet comes from the French word for pony, a reference to the straddling position needed to use these versions of the device. In other parts of the world, like Southeast Asia, homes and public bathrooms will often feature handheld bidets, such as jugs of water or small shower heads that are colloquially known as bum guns. In some religions, like Islam, which Mr. Mamdani and Ms. Duwaji follow, hygiene and cleanliness are tantamount to faithful worship, making easily available cleaning modes culturally essential too. While the bidet offers its users a thorough cleaning, it also has environmental benefits, Mr. Allen said, by cutting down on the amount of toilet paper used and the number of wet wipes that end up in landfills. In fact, the New York Department of Environmental Protection posted a video on Instagram of the mayor's bidet announcement with a caption that read, "More bidets equal fewer wet wipes." At one point, Gracie Mansion was public property, serving as a public restroom for visitors of the surrounding Carl Schutz Park before becoming the official mayoral residence in 1942. In 1981, when Mayor Kwok was considering a refurbishment of the mansion, the Times described its bathrooms as hardly rising above the one-star category. Mr. Bloomberg's renovation upgraded all 5 of the mansion's bathrooms. The most basic water jet-only bidet seat attachments can cost as little as $35. An installation would require only access to fresh water pipes, said Mr. Jacques DeBeer, founder of Bidet New York, which performs bidet installations across New York. Other bidet seats with more bells and whistles cost upward of roughly $300, and many would also need to be plugged into an electrical outlet, he added. The shape of the existing toilet seat also affects which bidet would be the best fit. But I've never found a case where I couldn't do it, he said. A mix of infrastructure shifts and lack of familiarity has until recently kept the bidet out of most American homes, said Bryant Simon, a professor at Temple University, who is currently writing a book about the history of public restrooms. Most households began to have 3-fixture bathrooms with a sink, a shower, and a flushing toilet starting in the 1880s, thanks to the widespread development of sewage systems, Mr. Simon said. Toilet paper also became mainstream around the same time. And, that just becomes people's experience for excretion for centuries, he said. I can only speak for myself. I'm 64, and the first time I went abroad in 1983 and saw a bidet, I didn't know what it was. But social acceptance shifted out of necessity during the pandemic when toilet paper became scarce, Mr. Simon added. It's a change he has noticed in his own circle, too. In a recent class, he asked his 13 students about bidets. They all knew what they were, and 4 students had used one. And over the holiday break, Mr. Simon went to 2 parties. Both homes had bidets. Obviously, I took note of it, he said. Social Cues by Philip Galanes. Our friend won't stop talking about her daughter's boyfriend. Help? An extended friend group has had it with the boyfriend updates, but apart from oblique jokes, no one is willing to address their friend's fixation directly. I am a part of a friend group of 7 women. One of us talks incessantly and obsessively about her adult daughter's boyfriend. The rest of us make gentle jokes about it so that she'll stop talking about him. We avoid asking questions about him, and we don't say anything to fuel further conversation about him when she brings him up. Most of our children have significant others, but we don't talk about them unless they are pertinent to the discussion. I find myself avoiding this woman because I don't want to hear about the minutiae of the boyfriend's life. This has been going on for 2 years now. Any advice? Friend. I'm going to take you at your word. The 7 of you are friends, which means that you care about one another on some level. Still, for 2 years now, none of you have taken this woman aside privately to say, "You talk about your daughter's boyfriend so much. Are you worried about their relationship?" Maternal concern seems as likely an explanation for her single-mindedness as obsession with her daughter's romantic partner. I get that making jokes about your friend's fixation may have seemed like a gentler way of resolving this problem when it began. It is also more passive-aggressive than simply stating your complaint directly. But avoiding your friend, as you now claim to do, rather than noting a minor conversational annoyance, makes me wonder about the depth of these friendships. It also makes me think about group dynamics. In general, it is better for friend groups to lift up their members than to trade eye rolls between some members at the expense of others. try to take care of one another, which can sometimes mean making an uncomfortable point for the benefit of the group. And if you do speak to your friend about this issue, privately please, I can almost guarantee that you will uncover a simmering worry or that the boyfriend will recede as a topic of conversation. Real anxiety over an imagined bris. A close friend is expecting a baby. If it's a boy, my friend will certainly invite me to the bris. I value our friendship and want to celebrate this new chapter in his life, but I have a deep-seated objection to the circumcision of infants for non-medical reasons. These babies have no say on an important matter. I simply cannot attend, and I don't want to lie about why I won't be there. Is there a way to handle this gracefully? Friend. Everyone loses perspective occasionally. Here you have cast yourself as a major character in events in which you are a bit player. Your friend is having a baby. That is not merely a new chapter, as you put it. It is a monumentous life event. But take a step back. You don't know that the baby will be a boy, or that the parents are planning a bris, the ritual circumcision of Jewish boys soon after birth to mark the covenant with God. It is hard for me to imagine factors less important than your opinion about circumcision or even your attendance at the phantom bris. Do not share your unsought views about the religious rituals with others. Simply decline the invitation after offering hearty congratulations on the baby's birth. No explanation for your absence is necessary. Make yourself at home, within reason. I live in a cottage on a lake, and I often invite guests to stay with me. I enjoy the company. Unfortunately, some of them take it upon themselves to go through my drawers and cabinets when they are looking for something. I start each visit by asking my guests to let me know if they need anything. I resent it when they open cupboards on their own and go through my things. Is there a gentle way to handle this? Host. When I am a guest, I hear invitations like yours, let me know if you need anything, as a generous offer to bring me more towels or an extra blanket, not as a prohibition against opening a few kitchen cabinets when I'm looking for a teapot in the morning. You haven't been explicit about the level of privacy you want or the specifics of where it's being invaded. But I agree that you are entitled to it in your home. So, revise your welcome as needed. Perhaps something like, let me know if you need anything. I'm particular about my cupboards and drawers, so please don't rummage through them. I'm happy to find you anything you want. That should do the trick, right? A sparkle is a sparkle is a sparkle. I gave my fiancée a synthetic diamond engagement ring, but she thinks it's a natural diamond. Do I have to tell her the truth? Fiancé. Of course you do. And I assume you know as much. Your fiancé may be thrilled that you were able to buy a larger synthetic stone at a fraction of the price of a natural one, or that you sidestepped the ethical issues that often surround mined diamonds, or she may be disappointed. But you know that she is operating under false assumptions, and your failure to correct it is as bad a start to a new chapter as you can find in your relationship. For help with your awkward situation, send a question to socialq@nytimes.com. Modern love. The kiss that stopped traffic. If you choose to live your life on the road, you may end up having the best kiss of your life in the middle of the street. By Mariah Hornbacher. He stopped in the center of the street, Washington Avenue, a major Minneapolis thoroughfare, and kissed me so hard and so well for so long that traffic stopped, lights changed, and the bustling city went silent as the drivers, instead of honking or hollering at us to get a room, began slowly, almost apologetically, staring around us. This kiss had been building. This was the kiss we hadn't been having for 3 days straight, spending almost every waking hour together at a professional retreat. He was a collegial friend. I didn't know him well. This was the kiss we didn't have when I picked him up at the airport, and the kiss we didn't have when we stopped for lunch, over which the air became suddenly electric. Lunch lasted for hours. By the end, we were both so addled that we got lost on the way to his hotel. This was the kiss we didn't have when he handed me a key to his room, and I looked at him, befuddled, and asked, "What's this for?" This kiss didn't happen, and didn't happen. It didn't happen when we went to get a bite the first night we got kicked out of the bar when they closed at 2 a.m. It didn't happen the next night when we rode through the darkened countryside with the stereo blasting rattle and hum. It didn't happen when we went back to his room after midnight and I sat at the desk editing a project for him, and when I was done, turned to see him lying on the bed, watching me with exactly the wrong kind of smile. Too gentle, too warm, his hands folded behind his head. I stood up and hastily gathered my jacket and purse. This was the kiss we didn't have when he sat up on the bed and said, "You don't have to go." I said, "I do have to go." He laughed softly and said, "Because you never regret leaving." I hesitated. I said, "I do regret leaving, sometimes." He reached for me. "But not until later," I said, and left. I am a full-time nomad. I live in a 16-foot camper I tow with a pickup, have no home base, and limit my possessions to those I can carry. And I don't date. By the time I left what travelers call the sticks and bricks life for good, I had been solo for several years, by choice. That doesn't mean I have rejected love wholesale. It doesn't mean I sit in my garret pining after someone or healing from a broken heart. It doesn't mean I'm lonely or bitter or never have sex. I have deep and lasting friendships that are the beating heart of my life. And I have lovers, scattered like pins in the map, who understand that while I may visit their bed from time to time, I'll be out of it before dawn. I have seen enough romantic love and domestic bliss to know they can be powerful bonds. I also have learned that bonds are what they are. I have been married more than once. Marriage strikes me as a beautiful and valuable discipline that nourishes something in many people. Just not me. Romantic love has curtailed my solitude and self-determination, my freedom of movement and sovereignty over my life. When my last partnership ended in 2020, I chose a more solitary, not isolated, not loveless, not celibate, not lonely life. I packed up my sticks and bricks life, its safety and warmth, security and clutter, its claustrophobic sameness, and left. I thought it would be easy to leave behind a life that was shaped by the habit of romantic partnership. I was wrong. As soon as I decided I was done with it, romance was everywhere I looked, so familiar it felt like fate. I didn't know yet that solo life and road life require a discipline of their own. You meet someone, there's a spark, you have a nice night or two, and when it's time to hit the road, you have to say, "Good luck, travel safe, goodbye." But the rogue wave of romance kept catching me off guard, pulling me under, carrying me back out to sea. Love's look-alike was everywhere that first year of nomadic life, waving at me from a mossy rock in Shenandoah and peeling up at a West Texas truck stop on a noisy hog. It offered things I missed, warmth, shared laughter, touch, and came with all the rules and riders I knew too well. It offered happiness, with caveats and fairy tale endings with unspoken demands I kept running afoul of at 3 a.m. when some fool wouldn't get out of my camper. Romance came a-calling in every imaginable guise. It showed up between the ages of 29 and 73, swaggering and smiling and cocky or scuffing its boots in the dust all shy. It rolled in with a big old boomer bank account, fixed its millennial hair in my sunglasses, and demanded that I validate its many millennial feels, stripped down to show off its Gen X back tats and rough-cut rage, and bellied up in the blue glow of Gen Z screen light, sharp-eyed and pale. It crept in all sneaky. It broke in by force. The only thing it always brought was a need I couldn't meet. I had to stay. They believed that one day I would. I always knew I wouldn't. The summer of the kiss, as I drove east on I-80, I was torn between wants. Like any mammal, I was tempted by the promise of companionship and the warmth of touch. I missed the comforts of home, having not missed home at all. There was an aching appeal to the life these people kept sketching out. "Let's do this together," they said. "Move in," they said. "I'll give you your own room. See, there's a bathtub. The fridge is always full. Here is a well-built box into which you can fit if you curl up small. Climb in." This time I almost did. Sunday afternoon, the conference over, I drove him back to the city. He was flying out the next day. I planned to drop him off and hit the road that night. Idling in front of his hotel, he said, "Let's go for a walk." I parked my truck and we walked toward the river. Then, as we crossed Washington Avenue, everything stopped for the kiss. Klimt painted this kiss. I'd had a kiss like this only once before in a life crowded with kisses. More than 20 years before, in a short-skirted leather suit and a string of pearls on the sidewalk in New York City, in the golden hour when the light shifts and the workaday world drops its dress to the floor and steps out of it shimmering. Then, too, a city's current of bodies simply adjusted course, eddying around us, as if we gave off some force field that was as natural and necessary as the flow of water itself. This kiss should have been different. We were older, knew better. This should have been nothing more than a chance encounter between two people who had crossed paths in a city where neither one lived. It didn't have to mean anything, or be anything more than an epic roll in the hay, a story he would tell about the latest one that got away, and that I would tell about the latest bed I had fled. We were well past the age of falling for the foolishness we think is the provenance of young love, both of us silver-haired with the work-roughened hands and sun-hardened hides of people who spend a lot of time outdoors. We saw ourselves as solitary people, lone wolves who liked the pack well enough but were at our best when we ran alone. The kiss ended the same way the first did and found me in the same place, plucking whatever clothes I could find from the wreckage of a hotel room. And this kiss had the same effect. It dragged me under into something I wanted and didn't want. Something I sometimes craved but had weaned myself off of and learned to avoid. Something I understand is both deeply human and an existential threat to the kind of life I live. Love. At 4 a.m., more than 12 hours after the kiss, I zipped up his hoodie, jogged down the hotel steps, and got in my truck and headed east. As the sun came up, my phone dinged with a text. There he was, a photograph in black and white, the sharp edges of his weathered face, his mane of white hair, his dangerous eyes. I saw the word, love, and threw the phone in the back. You've been listening to a reading of articles and features from the January 25th issue of the New York Times Style section. Your reader has been Laura. Thank you for listening.
Coming up next in the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, we have the USA Today. Following that at 2 o'clock is episode number 20 of Mark Twain by Ron Chernow. Stay with us for these readings and more. You're listening to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, broadcasting daily readings 24 hours a day of newspapers, magazines, and books to area people who are blind or have a print disability, who are provided reading radios. Radio Readings broadcast signal is provided at no charge by WNED. Radio Reading Studios are at 1199 Harlem Road in Cheektowaga, between William and Clinton Streets. Radio Reading's website is nfradioreading.org. For more information on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, call us at 716-821-5555.
The Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service